Hello there, this is Debbie Heiser, and I am so stinking excited to share this new season 4 with you. And I can't believe that this is already the 4th season of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. And I just want to thank each of you who listen. And my hope is that the tools, the thoughts and experiences I share, as well as the work I've done to love myself, love others, and love the work I'm called to do, that also helps me lead a truly lit up life, will help you move into a more lit up life yourself. A few things to look for in this season. Super excited to share that we're going to be coming to you now every week with episodes jam-packed with information to serve you. Every other week, you'll hear from a guest who's leading a life that they love, and I'll be asking them to share their stories, how they got there, and any thoughts or advice that they can give you, our loyal listeners. We have new music too, and I'm so thrilled to introduce this song called Ride, sung and co-written by my friend, Miss Jackie Wilson. And she, along with her collaborators, Tyler Banks, David DJ Lee, and Chris Renee, are super talented and generous, as this song fits perfectly into the thought of stepping into your best life. To follow any or all of these talented folks, check out the show notes for their social handles. Thanks again for listening. Enjoy season 4 and do us a solid and leave us a rating and a comment to help us be able to share more with people across the globe. Now, let's get started with this episode.
You're the only one who really can transform your mind.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I am really excited today because I am talking about self-sabotage. Now, I will tell you, I'm only saying that because that's the title of this. I have tried to eliminate those words from my vocabulary. You see, I don't believe that. I don't believe that the words self and sabotage should go together. And what I mean by that is I believe that those words self-sabotage, I think it's a lie. And if you listen in here in a second, I'm going to talk to you about brain science. And we create these lies. And because here's the deal, if I knew, I'm a smart woman, if I knew what was stopping me, I wouldn't do it anymore. And so therefore, what happens is when someone says you're self-sabotaging or don't self-sabotage, to me, that is really ridden with guilt and shame. Now, that's my own stuff, but I've talked to so many people, private clients, people I meet all the time, that they'll talk about what's stopping them and talk about it as self-sabotage, and that they feel guilty about not having changed something or feel shame about being where they're at. And so therefore the guilt and the shame then get in the way of them looking at what's getting in the way and getting through it. I know I'm doing a lot of getting in the way talk here and it's a roundabout, but hopefully you followed that. So I just have eliminated that from my vocabulary, because what I figured out is through a lot of teaching and through my mentor and my business coach is that really it's just brain science. And I want you to imagine, now some of you are watching the video, and so I'm not going to draw this out because then what happens is I stop talking to the audience that's not on video. But what happens is our brain, if you think about our brain as a circle, and the top half of our circle is our conscious brain. This is our brain that says, I'm going to accept what you say to me, Debbie, that you don't believe in self-sabotage, and therefore you're making a good argument. I'm going to accept that. It's also the part of the brain that says, Debbie, I don't accept that. I don't like that message. I choose not to listen to that. I choose not to hear that. I choose not to go forward and do something in my life because of X, Y, and Z, right? So we can accept messages into our conscious brain, and we can deny messages or choose not to believe certain messages, right? So we can reject those messages. Now, our conscious brain is also a really cool thing because it can also innovate and create. And so, you know, it's that creative part of us, and we consciously can look for new and innovative things to do. Now, what happens is if you look at the circle and that's the top half, the bottom half of the brain is our subconscious brain. Now, our subconscious brain is a little different here. Our subconscious brain receives messages, but it cannot reject messages. It can't say, no, I don't believe that. So we subconsciously get messages. Now, we get messages from all over the place. I got messages from my religious upbringing, and some of these are positive messages. Some of them are not so positive. I have received messages from my familia, right? Like my family, my tribe. I have received messages from what I watch on TV, what I listen to. And I know I sound old. I remember when my parents, and their parents all were like, oh, don't watch Elvis, don't do this, right? I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that I know, like during COVID, during the pandemic, I love dark dramas. I could not watch dark dramas to save my life. It just felt like everything in life was so dark at the moment. And so I consciously chose not to do that. And there are times that, like, I watch one of my favorite shows, the Fab Five, the Queer Eye, I think is what it's called. And like, it's such an uplifting show and I always feel better after I watch it. Well, that's these messages that come into our brain, right? So it's all over the place. Our environment. Do we live in a really messy environment? Well, that's then subconsciously giving us messages about ourselves. So the subconscious brain can only accept messages. And in order to change that, we have to unwind where those messages came from so that we can rewire our brain. So what happens though is we get these subconscious messages that come into our brain. And what happens is they turn into a belief. So therefore we have a belief about something. And that belief then changes into an action, and the action turns into a habit. So as an example, a belief that I had that I unwound was that when I had multiple things in the air, I'm teaching at Gonzaga and I have 2 classes at Gonzaga. I have 14 private clients that I'm meeting with. I do group calls with them. I'm part of an international mastermind. I also coach for that mastermind. I am part of a board in my community. I have relationships with my son and daughter-in-law and grandson. I have a romantic relationship. Like when I look at all of those things, I used to look at that and say, oh my gosh, I have way too much on my plate and therefore I don't have enough time and I'm overwhelmed. Now I'm really breaking that down in a quick way, but then I had this feeling of overwhelm, and how I got over the overwhelm was uncovering where those messages came from. And I have been involved in a lot of things since I was in high school. Like that was a family trait that we learned from particularly our mother, or my mother, where she did a lot of things. She was a very busy woman. And I've even started to take the word busy out of my vocabulary because my life is full and I like to have a full life. It doesn't mean that I don't have time for relationship or I don't have time to go do things that are fun. I make time for that. And that's part of the fullness of my life. But that's how I reprogrammed my brain to then say, it's not about feeling overwhelmed because I have all of these things. That's just part of my life. And so as I look at parts of my life, how do I do things then so that I get those things accomplished and I'm not procrastinating, which is a whole nother story because I'm a Myers-Briggs P and I like to be open to possibilities. So I wait till the last moment sometimes to do things because I'm still gathering data, but that's another podcast. Actually, that's a really good idea. I might have to do a Myers-Briggs podcast. But anyway, what happens is then I went back and I started to learn, where did I feel like that then became overwhelm? Where did I learn that that's overwhelming to have a full life? Well, frankly, too, there's a lot of people in our lives that say, oh, you're so busy. Oh, you're doing this, or you do so many things. I don't know how you do it all. That's just a part of my life. It's what I love about my life. And so that's even some subconscious messaging that gets into our brain about the overwhelm. We also, in this country, from a cultural perspective, wear badges of honor when we're way too busy, right? But I look at mine, I don't just do things to do them. For me, it's very mindful about what I'm doing. I'm choosing to do what I'm doing, and I love it. Now, if there's ever a time that something comes up that I don't want to do it, I'm pretty honest with people and I'll say, no, not at this time. Or if I'm getting involved in something and it's getting to be that time where I've added some value, I've gained value from it, and it's time to move on, I'll move on. Like I'm thinking about some boards, right? Like there are seasons to some of that too. I also think it's really, for me, it's important to contribute back to my society. So back to brain science, I had to figure out then that I had this habit of feeling overwhelmed, and it was a habit. And what fed into that were actions of me doing things like planning to plan. Like I had to have the plan, and then I had to sit down and make sure that that was done. I had to make sure I had a clean desk in order to function. Well, that's a lie. I don't have to have a clean desk to be able to tape a podcast. I mean, you can't see my desk right now. There's a ton of things laying on it because I'm getting ready to leave to go to Paris, France for 3 weeks. And so the point being is then I unwound that to say, okay, what's the actions then that I'm taking? Well, I'm putting so much work into planning something that instead of just doing it, I'm planning it, and therefore it's adding 3 steps, which then is creating more of the overwhelm. I had a belief that having multiple things going on at one time meant that I was in overwhelm. And so I had to unwind that and figure out where some of that messaging came from so that I could rewire it and say, I lead a full life. I love having multiple people in my life. I love having multiple clients. I love putting on events. I love teaching. Now, are there times that there's some peak times? Yeah. When I have both classes going on at the same time and I'm grading 16 papers in one class and grading, 20 posts in another class in any given week, that can be a little challenging. But you know what? That happens maybe twice during the whole 14 weeks. So it's also then about keeping it in perspective. And so when I think about brain science and I can step back and say, isn't that interesting? And I can look through the lens of curiosity and not judgment, that then helps me to step back and stop guilting myself, stop shaming myself, stop doing those things that then take me down a rabbit hole that I don't end up doing the action I want to do anyway. And so that's what gets in the way. So when I can uncover and go, isn't that interesting? That's showing up again, right? Like, where is this feeling coming from? Or, I'm feeling a little pushed right now. I feel like my busyness is coming back versus me feeling like I have a full life. Well, then I have some hacks that I use. I list down everything that I need to get done. I plot it out on my calendar and I know I can get it done. It's just like leaving for 3 weeks and then coming back and teaching for a week. So for all intents and purposes, I'm out for an entire month. Now it's the month before you're actually listening to this, but this is the very last thing that I needed to do before I left. And it's Friday at 1:45. So because I then plotted some things out, but I didn't go through and plan the plan. I didn't go crazy on planning, but I plotted and said, here's when I can get this work done in between seeing clients and doing the other things I need to do. So that therefore I didn't expend energy on worrying about getting the things done. There's a difference between, making the plan. I don't sit and color code my calendar anymore because that was a diversion for me to not do the work. And so it was resistance to something. So again, it's about just stepping back, realizing it's just brain science, and not applying that guilt and shame to ourselves, not applying I should be doing this, because whenever we should something, that means our critical parent is out. And for those of you that haven't heard the podcast on transactional analysis, I suggest that you go check it out. It's either at the beginning of this season or the end of season 3. And when our critical parent comes out, then we stop playing, we stop having fun, we stop enjoying the delights of this world. And so I'm going to challenge you to think about, where do you find delight in your world, and where are you feeling stuck? And when you figure out where you're feeling stuck, then start to think about, okay, where did that message come from? And what I mean by that, I'm going to give you 2 or 3 examples here of things that I've worked through in my life. Where did I learn I had to be perfect? That was I have to have the perfect plan in order to execute whatever it is that I'm wanting to execute, versus realizing that getting a cart moving is the hardest part. Once it's moving, the momentum goes, right? But you got to take that first step. So unwind. Where did I learn I had to be perfect? A lot of times there's no right or wrong way to do something. It just matters if it works for you and your business and what you're doing is right for you. But we apply this comparison, which then creates value on things. So where did you learn you had to be perfect? Unwind that one. That one I have layers that I go back and forth on, right? Then there's, where did I learn it wasn't okay to have fun before all the work is done? Because here's the deal, being an entrepreneur, honestly, the work is never done. There's always something on the list that can be done. Part of it's prioritizing, part of it's doing some things or hiring someone else to do it. That's why I hire a bookkeeper to do all my books. So when you look at that, though, I used to hear all the time, and my parents were great parents, so please know that I'm not downgrading them, but I would hear, get your chores done before you go play. Well, that's teaching me I have to get my list of things done before I can go play and have fun. But I have to have some fun. My little girl needs to come out and play. Otherwise, I can't be innovative and creative in my own business. So I had to unwind that and realize that's one of the messages I heard, right? Like in school, you get your work done before you can go to recess. And part of the punishment, if you don't get your work done sometimes, is you don't get to go out for recess. Well, that is a message saying, get your work done before you play. Now, I'm in disagreement with how they handle that, but that's a long-standing organization that's been around for a long time that continues to do that. Now, the other one I heard, and I fought with this for a long time, was clean your plate. They're starving people wherever that was, right? And so for years into my adulthood, I felt like I had to clean my plate, even if I wasn't hungry. And I don't know about you all, but when you go out to eat, there's enough for 2 or 3 people on a plate. I'm now to the point where a lot of times I'll split something with someone, or I just ask for a box and put half of it in a box, or ask if I can have a half order of something, because it's just too much. And that's something I still fight. And I honestly now, every time I eat somewhere, I try to leave a little something on my plate. Now, if I'm eating at home and I can do my own portion control, that's different. But I try to leave something on my plate because I'm rewiring my brain that I don't have to clear my plate. And now, even though I used to play that game, now for the most part, 90% of the time, it's just a part of how I am. I don't necessarily finish everything unless I'm really, really hungry, right? After a full day of skiing, sometimes I'm really hungry and it tastes really good. So the point being is that there are messages that I hopefully just sent out to you that resonate with you, of things that you've heard in your lifetime that then create in us this idea that we need to clean our plate, that we need to finish all of our work before we can play, that we need to be perfect. And so therefore we can't mess up. So then we either don't step into risk, or we spend all this time planning the plan because we can't mess anything up. Really investigate that in your life. It has made a huge difference for me and how I maneuver in life, and how I see delight now. And I experience delight a lot differently than I used to. So with that, this is the wrap for this episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. Thank you so much for listening. And please, please, please stop telling yourself that you're self-sabotaging. Just go step back and look through the lens of curiosity and go, isn't that interesting? Where might this be in my subconscious brain? Right? What are the habits or the actions that I'm taking into, then what does that lead into from a belief perspective? And where might I have heard that or experienced that in my past? If you'd like to dig into this deeper, see how it can impact your life or your business, please reach out to me. My name is Debbie Heiser. I help entrepreneurs make a lot of money doing what they love without sacrificing what's important to them, so that they can go out and live a lit up life. With that, have a fantastic week, and we'll see you next week.